Building art connections is an important part of being an artist. And in this video, I'm going to talk about ways to make meaningful connections and become a part of the art community without that kind of gross feeling that comes along with like networking. The most important thing to keep in mind about building connections with people is that it's a connection with a person. So make sure that at the beginning, when you meet someone new, you build an actual connection with them and you're not just like using them or like trying to get something from them right away. Over time, it'll become, you know, okay to like ask them if maybe they can help you in a certain way. But at the beginning, make sure that you're like not making any requests and instead focusing on like giving value to them or also like receiving in a anything that they do give. Like if they give you a compliment, say thank you, like be appreciative, sort of like show appreciation to them and for all of the ways that they are being like a good connection to you, and that's a form of giving too. And then definitely look for ways that you can kind of add value to their life. So like comment on their work, talk about their work, maybe post it in your Instagram stories. um Instagram is a really good tool for like building art connections. You can post in your stories. I wouldn't post on your feed because your feed should really just be only your art, but you can post in your Instagram stories, like image of other artists' artwork, and make sure to tag them by writing like at and then their name, and then that gets sent sort of to their inbox so they'll see it. And you can do the same thing for galleries, especially if you're like at the gallery, take like a vertical video of, some of the paintings and then like post it in your stories and tag like, name the artist and say like at the gallery, tagging them with that at symbol and then the gallery name, their Instagram handle or whatever. And again, they'll see that. And like sometimes they'll even end up reposting your post, and it can be a way to actually make them realize that you exist, and then they might follow you too. And or at least if you're like posting their work quite a bit, they'll eventually kind of like notice your name and they'll check out your work, they'll check out your page and see who you are. And don't expect anything right away or anything. It's a gradual process with all of these like meaningful connections, but that can be one way that's like really useful to kind of mobilize social media to help anchor in the new connections that you make. And a great way to make new connections, like to actually meet new people in the art world, is by going to art openings. And artists that I work with often ask me, like, how do I mobilize that? Like the problem with going to an art gallery opening is like the gallery owner is not going to want to talk to you. So don't try to talk to them. They're like very busy. They'll hate you forever if you run up with your portfolio on an opening night. It shows that you're a professional to know that you shouldn't talk to the gallery owner that night unless they approach you. After a while of going to the openings, they'll start to recognize you as a, common face, like at their openings, and they'll start to like wonder, like, who is this person? And for sure, if they come up to you and they strike up a conversation, like, be ready, like, receive that, in other words. So a lot of the connection building almost has to do with being ready to receive at any point and sort of watering those seeds until the time comes. So showing up at openings and also keeping your goals in mind, your dreams in mind, and sort of looking for a little opening that is a place where you can sort of like make it happen. But yeah, when you go to the openings, just be like a normal person, like very casual. You don't need to be like super proper. I used to be afraid of galleries pretty much because actually my mom, when I was younger, I think told me her impression of like people in the art world and openings and galleries, and just thought like they're all really, it's a stuffy, snooty kind of like pretentious kind of environment. And I would like, when I first started getting into or just going to openings or even being a part of the art world, having shows and stuff, I was trying to be like this like proper, person, like, how do I be? But the more I let go of that, the more things kind of flowed naturally. Like nobody likes that. Nobody wants anyone to be like that. And nobody that I've really met is like that. Like most of the people in the art world are very casual, very relaxed, like really normal people. The more you can be casual with them, the more it makes them at ease to be like, relaxed around you as well. Um, So yeah, and sometimes it's good to go, or at least plan to go with another person, like to meet them there. I'll often like have another artist that I'm meeting at the opening so that when I arrive, I'll see someone that I know. And it's actually quite good. Like if anyone's watching you, for example, say the gallery owner is watching you as you walk in, it looks good if you walk in and you're like, oh, hi, and maybe another couple people and you're like, hi, hi, like they're like, she's part of the art world. So try to kind of look like you like fit in. I think I read somewhere a trick, so funny, on this topic where someone would sometimes just walk into a gallery, maybe not know anyone, but just be like, hi, even though like almost over everyone's shoulder, just to look as if they fit in. So you can always try that too. Um, but the more you go, the more you will actually like have people that you do recognize there that you can sort of like say hi to. Try not to like um be on either side of a situation where you're like talking to someone for way too long, like kind of trapping them in a corner and ending up in a super intense conversation that nobody can escape from. So kind of keep it moving a little bit, and find good ways to exit if you find yourself trapped in one of these conversations. Yeah, and like sometimes, not too often, but sometimes I'll like strike up a conversation with a stranger, like about the work. Maybe we're both standing in front of something, and you might just say, some random comment about the work. Always keep it nice. Like if this is a gallery that I want to be in, make sure that all of your comments about the work are always nice. I, no offense to my mom, but I remember going into galleries with her, and she would often like comment about what she didn't like about the art. And these were galleries that I was like trying to get into, and I'd be like, Mom, no, like only good things. Like the gallery is really proud of what they show. They're working really hard. So you have to kind of keep that in mind. So yeah, they're really proud of what they show. It means a lot to them. So make sure that your comments are all nice things. But don't necessarily expect to like meet strangers. It's even just like a low pressure situation where you're just being around people. And the more you're around people, you'll get introduced, it'll happen kind of organically, and all of a sudden you'll find yourself walking into an opening and genuinely being like, hey, and like, a bunch of people there. And when that starts to happen, it feels like, oh, this is good. It's starting to kind of, mobilize or whatever. And then another thing that I've read about and actually done myself, I read about this in the book, How to Get Hung. She described this idea of like putting up a great big piece of paper on your wall, like at home. So when you come back from these openings or whatever, you write down the names of all of the people that you've like met, and start to make a sort of network of people, like drawing lines between people who know each other, and you sort of get this web of like who knows who and who you've met and stuff. And you can also add to that, and I did this, anyone that you want to meet. So, for example, when I wanted to get into like art magazines and I didn't know how, the first thing I did was open up the magazines, find the name of the editor of each of the magazines, and put their name on my great big paper on my wall. And I wrote underneath them, like, editor of so and so magazine. And every now and then I would look at my paper on the wall, and I would kind of refresh my mind about who I've met and stuff like that, especially before going to openings. I might just like kind of make sure I remember who I've met so that if I see them again, I'll say hello and maybe even remember their name. If I'm not sure about their name, I never risk it. And also, as you start to make lots of connections and it gets risky to say, like, oh, nice to meet you, or something like that. It's better, I've learned this from other artists, it's better to say, good to see you. And then even if you've never met, they're like kind of flattered that you think you might have. And if you have met before, then you're not going to totally blow it, because it really is actually pretty terrible when you've met people, maybe sometimes even a few times, and you keep saying, like, oh, it's so good to meet you. Like I had one girl be like, we've met 3 times. It's like, oh no. So kind of get into the habit of actually just make it natural. Like, but back to this paper on the wall. So I had the names of magazine editors like written on the paper, and then one day, and I was at the New York Academy of Art at the time, so we were having studio visits and things like that. I think it was at one of the end of year shows, and someone walked into my studio, and I was like, oh, good to meet you. And then when he said his name, I was like, oh, you're the editor of so and so magazine. And, and he was like, oh, yes, I am and stuff. And then we actually kind of made a connection. Like, I definitely gave him my business card and got his. And later I actually like was in the magazine and everything like that. But I saw him walk into other people's studios and he'd be like, oh, hey, I'm so and so, and they like would be like, oh, good to meet you, but they didn't have that moment, and I wouldn't have had that moment of realizing like, aha, you're the editor of so and so magazine, if I hadn't already written him on my like wall of the people that I wanted to know, you know so that can be like a really useful tool. And then other times you'll be going into galleries to kind of do like a reconnaissance mission to kind of figure out what galleries might be a good fit for your work and just sort of make this initial contact. And those are best done in the middle of the week, never on an opening, and not at a busy time in the gallery. Sometimes that it's like pretty quiet. And so for those situations, you'll kind of walk into the gallery, never bring your portfolio, have your website up to date though, just in case, and look through the whole gallery, look at all the work on the walls, really take it in, and then kind of go up to the person at the front desk and strike up a conversation with them, like saying, oh, I really like what so and so is doing with the textures in this painting over here. Some nice comment about the work on their walls. And they'll sort of strike up a conversation with you, like, oh, yes, that's exactly what they're doing, or whatever. And at this point, they may or may not know that you're an artist, but they probably already completely do know that you're an artist. So you don't need to tell them, like, I'm an artist. You can just assume that they know. And then I like to just segue the conversation to, like, oh, I was just wondering what your submission process is like. Do you prefer to receive emailed submissions or a hard copy of the artist packet mailed to you? And they'll answer the question. It's actually a really good trick because otherwise, like I used to be like, oh, I'm an artist. I was wondering how to submit my work. And a lot of the time they get overwhelmed, they'll just be like, oh, we're not taking your work. But it's almost like you kind of trick them into answering a non yes or no question. And they'll normally say, oh, we prefer it emailed. And then you kind of slip your foot into the door and you can just be like, oh, great, who should I email that to you? And how many images do you like to see? And get the name of the person that you were talking to, and yeah, get their contact information and stuff. And then as soon as you get home, and I would do this with any art contact as well that you meet, like so definitely these gallery meetings, and if you meet someone at an opening that you want to like strengthen a connection with and you happen to have their mailing address, maybe they give you their card or whatever, send them a greeting card with an image on your work like that night so that they can remember that they ever met you. And no, keep it super low pressure, not anything about you or your work or like anything, just totally purely like, yeah, it was just so great to meet you, during my recent visit to your gallery, or at so and so opening, or whatever it was. Like, I'm looking so forward to seeing you again soon. And if it was a gallery that you like walked into and you talked about submitting, you could say like, I'm really looking forward to sending you some images of my work soon, and then just like all the best and sign it off or whatever. Don't put a business card in, nothing like that. That's too like heavy-handed. But just this greeting card, and it kind of seals, like it anchors in the connection, and just keeps it kind of going. Um, and yeah, and the other thing to remember is that like artists hold the key to the art world. So not to only be trying to connect with gallery owners and magazine editors, but make a concerted effort, like really take it, it's valuable when you meet another artist, and not in the way that you're like trying to get something like from them. Like I really would try not to think about the connections like that, but just remembering that like as you build friendships with like other artists, it's valuable. A lot of the times other artists might like suggest your work to one of their galleries. Knowing artists is like really how it all has happened for me. Like it was like from a different artist. We were out drinking or whatever, and he had brought along this other different magazine editor, and we met. And then, again, I know that it's like you look for an opening and then you kind of like jump on it. So I was very casual that night and we were just having a fun time, no mention of business and art, but I had met this guy, the other magazine editor at this point. And so then, like, I don't know, a week or two later, I wrote to him and just said, like, oh, it was so great to, hang out with you. It was during the Armory, so I mentioned that. And that and that I had this idea for an article, like a tutorial article, and I sent him the image of the painting that would be a step-by-step article, like wondering what he would think about it. And yeah, he thought it was a great idea. So I wrote the article and got it in the magazine. And it was like going back to this idea of having a goal in mind, like it's kind of important to have like these clear visions in your mind about what you want to accomplish and then just look for little openings. So I had like a vision board and I wanted to be in magazines and couldn't seem to make it happen, but I knew I wanted to be in art magazines. I really did. I wanted that. And so then I was just looking for any openings. I wasn't like forcing it before it was like ready, but as soon as I got some kind of synchronistic opening, like, yeah, like these two synchronicities meeting these two different magazine editors, then I sort of nurtured the connection and kept it cool, until, yeah, and then, very friendly kind of suggested my ideas to them. And so that's kind of how a lot of the opportunities work. It's like you want to just be laid back and like a normal person when you first meet, don't ask for anything, add value and just be fun and nice, like appreciative and then like kind of seal the connection by maybe sending a card, again, very low pressure card, like no pressure, or an email, just continue the connection. And also never being high maintenance, like being aware that they're really, really, really busy, like anyone in the art world. So not just send lots of emails and definitely not long emails. It shows how kind of how you understand and how professional you are if you keep it brief and you keep it infrequent, like if I'm sending them an email, I'll give them like a long time before I would ever follow up, probably even at the beginning, like a month, like I would just give them so much time. But I'll follow up, like I'm going to make sure that we stay connected, so I don't need to worry about anything. So that's kind of the overview of how I would suggest building art connections in the art world. And just remember, like, be nice to everyone. I remember reading somewhere to just, as an artist, like, be nice to everyone, because apparently the people that you see on the way up are also the people that you'll be seeing on your way down as they are coming up. So just, yeah, be nice to everyone and try and keep it genuine, of course, like just like actually build real connections with people.